สวัสดีครับ I'm Point from ค้นพบ In the spirit of Halloween that's just round the corner now, I want to talk about evil today. The mechanics of evil and how evil is created, how it works, and what the devil really is. Now, I must issue a warning here that this topic today is going to be quite controversial because you're not going to like what you're about to hear. It's a direct attack on the ego.But nonetheless, I think it's important to talk about how evil works and how evil is created for three main reasons. Number one, if we don't understand how evil is created, we will unwittingly and foolishly create more evil in the process. Number two, if we don't understand what evil is, then we will feel really disturbed when we see all these negative things and bad things out there in the world,which we view as evil. Say when we see a very dramatic piece of news about something that's really negative, like a crime or a murder, etc. Right? So understanding evil actually helps us to be more at peace with how the world works. Not to say that we're not going to take action, but to be more at peace. And number three, which is perhaps the most important reason, is when we understand the mechanics of how evil works, it helps us to develop more understanding of other people and how they can commit wrong or commit immoral acts according to our view or according to the general population, the general public's view even. And therefore, it helps us to develop compassion for them. And out of that, you're able to forgive them more. You have a bigger capacity to forgive other people and also forgive yourself. Out of this,you start to derive wisdom. So next time somebody does wrong to you or somebody does something immoral, you're going to be more wise in how you approach the problem rather than be at the grip and control of your fear, of your emotions, and react in a way that is foolish, making things only worse. Anyways, without further ado, let's dive into the topic. So you can probably guess by now that I'm about to say that You are the one that creates evil. Your ignorance is what creates evil. Your ego, your selfishness is what creates evil. And therefore, you are the devil, just as I am the devil, just as I create evil out of my own ignorance. In a nutshell, evil is nothing more than a concept that your mind projects outwards in order to protect and somehow maintain and uphold this sense of self, your ego structure, the self-concept that you have. Now, to dive into the mechanism here, it's important to go a bit deeper into what the ego is and what the self-concept is. I've talked about the ego many times in my previous videos. And for this video's purpose, I'm going to use the term ego and self-concept interchangeably to mean the same thing. So,we have to understand what the ego and the self-concept is and how that interplays with the ego's self-survival agenda. So to begin, what is the ego? What is this self-concept? The self-concept is this mental image that you have in your mind about who you think you are, who you feel you are, who you believe you are. Therefore, it includes much more than just your physical body. It goes much further than your physical body, your skin color, your hair color, your ethnicity, your nationality. It goes way beyond that. It includes your tribe, your community, your family. It includes your social circles, your friends, etc. And it includes not only the physical aspects of you, but the conceptual aspects of you, such as the belief systems that you hold, the notions of what you believe to be true and false, good and bad, moral, immoral, ethical, unethical. It includes the religious ideas and religious beliefs that you hold, or if you are an atheist, also that as well. It includes all the ideologies that you hold, how you view the world operates. It includes your political views, all this structure which is actually based on a belief and on a concept, and also includes your likes, your dislikes, your preferences,your taste, etc. All these things are part of this structure that comes to create this sense of self, sense of who you feel you are, who who you think you are, who you believe you are, right? And the way in which the ego works is, in order to feel that you are a self, in order to feel that you are a complete self-concept, it must feel solid. These feelings must feel solid, must feel tangible, and must feel true. And oftentimes, part of this self-image that we have is that we are a good person, and our beliefs in morality is true. It is the absolute truth. Again, it must be solid. It must be tangible, right? And the way in which the ego works, by definition, because you have created self, what you're really doing, even if you may be unaware of it, and most times we are unaware of this, is we are actually creating a boundary, a mental division, so to say, that, okay, this structure about me, this bubble here is me. Anything else outside this bubble is not who I am. It doesn't concern me. It's not me. It is therefore the other, right? And this other thing includes physical objects in the world, in our physical reality, the environment that we live in, as well as other people, and more importantly, other ideas, other belief systems, other religions, other moral systems, other ideologies, you name it, right? By having an ego, by having a sense of self, by definition, you have created a division in how you look at the world and how you navigate reality. Your sense of self is one thing, and the other is external. And because you have a sense of self, by definition, you must have a self-survival agenda. Your self-survival agenda, which is an interplay of your ego, is a function of your ego, it goes much further than just say, you know, oh, you need to get a job to get the financial income to provide a roof over the top of your head, to provide for food, water, shelter, etc. It goes way beyond that. Self-survival is to protect, uphold, and maintain everything that's part of this me structure, including all the concepts, ideas, beliefs, notions, morality, moral views, everything that you hold, right? And your ego will do everything in its power to protect this, your sense of self. It is a survival drive. Okay, so the interesting thing is, therefore, how is evil created in this process? This is what happens. When you identify the other in the world, say I'm Thai, I'm Point, right? I believe I'm from Bangkok, I'm from Thailand. The other for me would be, say, a friend I have that is from Europe, right? At the same time, that friend is part of my ego structure, but by the same token, he or she is also different, right? So let's say you define things as other. The moment your ego perceives that other as a threat or a danger to this structure, it will have to label it as bad and demonize it and label it as a threat, as evil, right? So let's say that I'm a very, very religious person. Let's say I'm a very religious person and I don't like the idea of evolution. Let's say. And so therefore, a scientist who is a biologist and who is promoting the theory of evolution, according to my ego structure, according to my self-concept, I would naturally want to label that as bad, as wrong, as immoral, as evil, because that idea, that concept that's out there is a threat to my belief systems and my self-concept. That let's say I believe in religion, and therefore we reject my religion. Let's say rejects the idea of evolution. So you can see how this interplay happens. By example, right? You must demonize the other, which you identify as a sense of threat to you, either physically and or conceptually. So somebody who is a criminal that you see on the news, who, let's say, oh, there's a criminal on loose near my area in where I live, that is a direct threat to your physical self. At the same time, different ideas, say a different political idea, right, that's being advocated, which you strongly disagree with, that's also a threat to your sense of self structure, your ego. So therefore, you want to demonize it. You want to label it as bad and as evil, right? And you can begin to see the steps of how you will create evil out of this ignorance. Out of this ignorance that you must protect this self-structure at all cost. So if you go, unchecked, if you're not aware of how this is start to play in your emotions, which by the way is closely tied to fear. You can see that this is closely tied to fear because in a sense, you fear that criminal that's on the loose, or you fear that that idea that is threatening to your sense of self and how you view and navigate the world, how you navigate your reality. You view that as a threat, and therefore you operate from a place of fear. Now, if this goes unchecked, what am I going to do? I'm going to start to demonize that person, criticize that person, or even take physical actions against that person who has a different view than me or who is a criminal on the loose. I might, become a vigilante, for example, and do things on my own to protect my family and my community against that person and take the law into my own hands. That's for an extreme example. But you see how this develops out of fear, out of ego, out of ignorance, and then it can easily develop into anger, hate, distrust. I need to act out of revenge or vengeance. So you can see how acts of evil develop from this mechanism. Now, this mechanism, due to the way the ego works, first of all, you can see how it's really mind-blowing how this works because it works on the concept of deception. You must trick yourself into upholding this sense of structure as true. It works on diversion, distraction, deception, tricks, illusions, just like a magician uses a sleight of hand. Because in order for this ego and the survival agenda to work perfectly to meet your survival needs, you must prevent yourself, your mind must prevent yourself from looking inwards and self-reflecting upon your own thoughts, actions, etc. Right? Because this whole thing must work by letting you focus on the external world and blaming the other, as we have described. So therefore, evil is a concept that your mind projects onto something else that you label as bad or view as a threat to your sense of self, to your ego. And in doing so, it gets you to act in ways, whether on a thought level or in physical actions, to eliminate that evil that you see at all cost, without having to think about it second thought, without having to self-reflect on your own thoughts, conclusions, and actions, and without having to feel guilty. This is how the mechanism of evil is created. And as I just said, it works on deception. You delude yourself. You trick yourself into looking outwards and projecting outwards rather than reflecting inwards. Because for the mechanism to work, you must be distracted from looking inwards and seeing how this whole mechanism plays out. Otherwise, it will break the chain, right? And I'll get to that deceptive nature pretty soon as we use some examples. Okay, so you can see where I'm going here, that first of all, your sense of self and your belief systems, your value systems, right? Your self-image that you're a good person, your mind holds this as an absolute truth. You identify with it so much that you're not willing to let go of it. You're so attached to it. You're so attached to this notion of who you think you are, who you feel you are, who you believe you are, that you're not going to let go of it at any time soon. So you can see how, actions that come out of fear will lead you to do foolish actions that unwittingly lead to destructive actions, which is evil itself, right? Okay, so let's use the help of an example. So actually in Thailand, a month or two ago, there was this big controversy that happened. There was this big controversy where a university student, a year for a university student, drew the image of the Buddha. So Thailand is a Buddhist country, and about 90% of the population is Buddhist, are Buddhists. And this year for a university student drew a picture of the Buddha in the Ultraman action figure. Of course, Ultraman is a Japanese superhero, all right, the protector of the universe, etc. Right? And in the background, she used a materialistic background, like say, I think Louis Vuitton design or something like that. You can search this in a news story. If you just search Ultraman Buddha in Google, you'll find plenty of stories about this. So, as you can probably expect, that picture, that image was met with extreme backlash. And the country is pretty much divided on two sides. One side supporting the student for her creativity and her courage. The other side, which was led by the hardcore, hardliner Buddhists, wanting to demonize this girl and destroy her life. And as a matter of fact, they even filed complaints against her. They tried to file criminal charges against this girl. So, where is the devil at play here? The hardliner Buddhist group, I don't know their name, I forgot their name, the hardliner Buddhist group, which tried to destroy this girl's life and poor girl and try to get rid of the painting, destroy it at all costs. From their perspective, they thought they were doing good. So number one, we can see that, again, their sense of self that they're good has been solidified. It's really solid and real to them. They really think that by demonizing this girl and the painting, they are doing a service to Buddhism. They are doing a service to Buddha, which in fact, if you're a real Buddhist, you will know that Buddha never taught attachment. Buddha taught you to detach. Buddha taught you to be compassionate, to not react with anger, but to act wisely, right? So you can see the irony here. But the mechanism of the devil and the mechanism of evil is completely at play perfectly well here. Because from the perspective of the hardliner groups, they think they're doing a service to the world. As a matter of fact, they even make this argument that, if left unchecked, this whole thingy will be a big movement that will undermine national security, which, by the way, is a fallacy of reasoning called the slippery slope that is used by their ego to delude themselves into believing their reality, that their actions are justified and good, and that they are moral and righteous and protecting Buddha and protecting Buddhism. Now, when this hardcore, religious Buddhist group, what they're really doing is, when you attack and demonize somebody, by the other side of the coin, when you do that, you're creating for yourself a false sense of righteousness. You can feel like, yeah, I'm a good Buddhist because I'm protecting Buddha. So you see how the ego is at play here. It is only that attack is in itself, that labeling the girl as evil and as bad and attacking her for it is in the sense of the ego, the self-concept, it serves to uphold, maintain that group's survival agenda. The people who are extremists, their ego, to maintain that ego's survival agenda. So that's example number one. And of course, if you believe that girl did a very, very big wrong action and you're opposing what I'm saying now, first of all, I thank you for your attention to watching to this point. But also, that proves my point exactly. I'm not trying to say if the girl is right or wrong. I'm just trying to explain the mechanics of how your self-deception and self-righteousness and your ego is work, operating from a place of fear and completely gripping your behaviors, actions completely. So it's absolutely insane how this works. Even if let's say if you disagree with me and you get upset watching me say this right now or sharing this viewpoint, that is also you demonizing me, because somehow this idea represents a threat to your structure if you are a hardliner Buddhist, and therefore you cannot make any rude image against the Buddha. See how this mechanism works here? Here's another example. I want to share this quote that I don't know where it's from, but it's an old proverb that says that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And that comes from the ego again. It comes from the way the ego works. So let's use the example of terrorism. Right now, what is the world fighting against? What is by world, I mean Western nations mostly, right? They're fighting against the terrorists in the Middle East, the Islamic State, ISIS, right? And what is the idea they're selling to the public when they're fighting terrorism? Oh yeah, we're gonna destroy this evil. We're gonna uproot this evil. We're gonna crush them all. We're gonna drive out ISIS. We're gonna liberate the Middle East, liberate Iraq, etc. Right? And how do they fight? Right? So they justify themselves into taking that action, right? And they use drone strikes to drive them out. And what happens in the process? Millions of people and millions of homes are damaged. People lose their lives. Innocent bystanders who are civilians get, the drone strike and they die. And you think that's gonna, make peace, or is it gonna breed more hate? And those people who the drone strike happened and they lost all their family members, what do you think is going to happen to them? They're going to be radicalized and they're going to want to join ISIS. So you see how when you come from this place, you end up creating more evil unwittingly, foolishly creating more evil in the process. So trying to take on evil by labeling it as evil is not the wise answer here. It's very counterintuitive. But you see how this mechanism works? The mind, right? It gets you to divert your attention upon an external enemy, right? Which is, for example, in this case, Islamic State, ISIS, right? Again, I'm not saying that we should or should not stop fighting the Islamic State. Of course, I don't want terrorists to roam around freely in the world, as I'm sure most people would agree with. But that's my point exactly. If you're watching this, and let's say somebody who's watching this is part as that policy-making team, right, for some Western government, say the United States, right, part of a policy-making team, let's say they watch this, they might want to demonize me, say, oh, what are you talking about? You don't know how complex the situation is. It's a very delicate situation. You need to use military force to overcome this with power, etc. You don't know what you're talking about. But that's my point exactly. That kind of thinking would want to demonize me as the messenger boy to try to get you to self-reflect and look inwards rather than project outwards, which the devil wants you to do. Here's another example, right? The way in which the mind works, the ego works, it will use all these diversion tricks, distraction tricks. It will use the straw man fallacy of reasoning, for example. It will twist and distort all good reasoning into an easier argument to attack. And then to what? To do what? To shrug it off, to not have to take it seriously, to not have to take it into consideration and start to do honest self-reflection. That's how this works. So for example, you might be following this video right now. You might be thinking, okay, Point, I sort of see what you're saying here, but where are you going? I'm not a rapist. I'm not a murderer, right? I didn't kill anybody. I'm not the Islamic State, right? I didn't draw that Buddha image, right? So what's your point? Sure, okay, I admit I might lie to my family members sometimes. I might lie to my girlfriend sometimes. I might lie to my boyfriend sometimes. But come on, we all do that. What are you trying to say? I'm not a rapist. Right, you didn't rape anybody, right? You didn't murder anybody, right? You didn't commit any major crime. But I'm saying that the mechanisms that lead a human to be able to take that heinous action also lies within you, right? And you might be like, oh, how dare you compare me to a rapist? I am not a rapist. That proves my point exactly. That's how your mind diverts your attention. By attacking my argument and trying to twist it to say that, oh, why are you defending rapists? Why are you defending murderers? I'm not saying what's right or wrong. I'm just trying to explain the mechanism of how this self-deception mechanism works. You need to deceive yourself because if you look inwards, you will start to see how your mechanism plays out, how this ego, the mechanism of the ego plays, and it will cut the chain of how this all works. And it will create too much cognitive dissonance in you because you will start to see how your actions in everyday life also have the same fundamental principles, the mechanics at play, the same mechanics at operation as somebody who does the most evil crimes that you can think about. Right? So speaking about a rapist, I recently saw this really disturbing news that there was a stalker in Japan that was stalking a Japanese pop idol or a singer or something like that, right? And he stalked her and molested her. Guess how he found her out? He found her out through a picture, a selfie that she took that had a reflection in her eye. And he apparently zoomed into that reflection and found out the area from which she lived. How insane is that? Yeah, you can look up this story if you're interested. So, look, the point is, another perspective I want to present is when we demonize that person as, wow, evil, wow, so bad, we must destroy that person, we must eliminate that stalker. In a sense, the reason why there's such a strong tendency to judge that person and to demonize that person and to destroy and make that person the evil guy and destroy and eliminate him as much ASAP is because In a sense, if you look at the other side of the coin, the thought of having these people in our society, the thought that these people could be your next door neighbor in society is a really disturbing thought. Because if that's true, if a stalker or a rapist or murderer could be somebody who looks totally normal on the outside but is the demon on the inside, that thought is disturbing. Because again, that thought threatens your sense of self-structure. Because you begin to think about, holy crap, if this is true, then could I fall victim one day? Could my sister fall victim one day? Could my daughter fall victim one day? Could my wife, could my girlfriend fall victim one day? It's a disturbing thought to think about. Again, your mind wants to project evil onto that right away to prevent you from looking inwards. Because as you self-reflect, you will begin to see how the mechanics of your own self-deception, how your mind tricks yourself into labeling somebody else as bad, how it all works. And in terms of mechanics, it's pretty much the same, right? So, okay, yes, of course, most people aren't rapists, most people aren't murderers, most people aren't terrorists, they aren't Nazis. But if we understand how this mechanics works, we can look at ourselves and self-reflect, and that will apply in our daily life, right? Maybe we'll think twice before we want to lie to our partner. We will think twice before we want to lie to our family member. We'll think twice before we want to manipulate somebody in a business deal, for example, right? But to get to that point, it requires confronting your own dark side, confronting your own ego, which is why immediately upon hearing some idea like this, you'll want to shrug it off. It's not a fun idea to discuss about. It's not something that you would talk about easily with somebody else. It's disturbing to realize, right? And so the key is counterintuitive. The key to getting out of this problem is very counterintuitive. You don't defeat evil by bringing more hate, anger, and evil to the table, right? That only creates more problems, creates more evil. It's counterintuitive. You defeat evil by looking inwards, by self-reflecting. Now, even if you follow along with my logic, you might be like, okay, I agree with what you're trying to say here. Even if you follow along to this point, there's another barrier that you have to go through, which is oftentimes we don't self-reflect honestly. We self-reflect superficially, right? Because the mind is trying to self-reflect, but in a way that's pleasing to the ego. In a way that, yeah, that still justifies our action and sort of looks at the other as bad. You see how extremely self-deceptive and extremely magnificent in a sense your mind works. It works on self-deception, diversion, distraction, illusion, right? And therefore, evil is created from nobody but us, right? The same mechanics that lead somebody to do the very worst crimes that one can imagine, they lie in each and every one of us because they are tied to the ego, the self-concept, and the self-survival agenda. Again, sure, the content or the act may be different. The scale of damage may be vastly different, but the mechanisms are still the same. So, what's the point of this video? The point of this video is by looking inwards, we're going head-on against the ego. If you're willing to do that and you really self-reflect, it actually makes you more humble because it gives you a sense of humility that, oh my God, I actually have these same mechanics in me too, and they operate in the way I manipulate that person in my relationship, manipulate my business partner, try to backstab my colleague at work, try to lie to my mom, my dad, my girlfriend, my boyfriend, my wife, my husband, etc. These mechanics lie in me too. And when you see how this works, without judging yourself, just observing it to see how it works, you will begin to understand how difficult it is to overcome your own mind, to overcome your own mind's self-deception tendencies. And with that appreciation, you develop more understanding of yourself and therefore of other people. It goes back to what I said in the beginning of the video. Once you understand other people more, you have more compassion for them. Sorry, my camera just shut off there for no reason. I don't know why. Maybe it's evil. Who knows? Anyways, as I was saying, once you understand yourself more, you can understand other people more as well. Through that, you develop more compassion for them. You develop more forgiveness for other people and for yourself. You're able to forgive other people more easily as well as yourself. And it gets you to think twice next time before you want to demonize somebody else, or before you want to call somebody else bad, judge them, call them evil. And it gets you to think twice next time before you want to cheat, lie, deceive, manipulate those people around you, right? So it has real practical applications, and it cuts the cycle of evil because you're no longer responding by adding more hate, evil, anger, vengeance, revenge. You're not adding that to the table. You're cutting the cycle from repeating itself. But again, this takes an enormous amount of patience to realize. It's not that you watch a video like this and you think about this for 5 minutes. It requires deep contemplation and deep self-honesty, and patiently observing yourself through weeks, through months, through years, to see how you yourself behave in similar ways, behave in ways that stem from the mechanics as discussed. So I think I've gone on very long today. I wanted to really communicate this right because it's so easy for you to misinterpret this, or want to distort, or for your ego, better say, to want to distort this argument, to shrug it off, to not take it into consideration or take it seriously. So thank you very much for watching. Please leave in the comments what you think, what you found most insightful in this video, or what you disagree with. And because I'm also the devil, maybe I'll go and debate with you. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please leave a like for me. Please share the video for me. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're watching on YouTube. Hit the bell notification button. And please like my Facebook page if you're watching on Facebook. So, Kon Pop on Facebook for future videos. That's it for now. Good luck. All the best to you. I'll see you next time. สวัสดีครับ